Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H Event Space. Today we are diving into the world of photo tours, the travel, the fun, the best equipment, of course. This is hosted by Canon, so a huge thank you to them. And we couldn't do it without the man himself, who's not talking about the Olympics today for once, Jeff Cable.
That's true. I'm not.
You do other things besides the Olympics. You see the world.
I do. It's kind of crazy because the Olympics is a once every 2 years deal. We're actually working on Milan right now for the Winter Olympics. We're fully into that. But yeah, I mean, when I'm not shooting that, I'm shooting events here in the Bay Area. I'm doing photo tours. It's pretty cool to be able to do what I love and get paid for it is crazy cool.
It's the dream, man. You're living the
It is.
dream. Well,
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'll let you take over, Jeff. This is a great time for you guys. If you've ever thought about doing a photo tour, today is for you. So if you do have any questions at all, feel free to get them in. And Jeff, I'll see you at the end for some Q&A.
You got it. Let me, I'm gonna share a screen here because you don't want to see my ugly mug. Let me do that. Hold on. And you tell me if you can see full screen. Are we good?
We are good.
Awesome. I will jump right in then. As long as we're ready to go here. For those who are not familiar with me, my name is Jeff Cable. I have been a photographer now for 25 years. As I said, I get to do what I love. And part of that is doing photo tours. And I thought, I've done a lot of tours over the last 7 or 8 years. And I thought, I get a lot of questions from people on, what to do, what not to do, how do you find a good tour? So I thought I'd go ahead and share that with you all. Let me start by saying thank you to Canon. I've been working with Canon now for 20 years and using their cameras and lenses. And they were nice enough to sponsor this presentation. So you can thank Canon for that. I want to jump right in. People ask, what is the difference between a photo tour and a photo workshop? Because there's actually a difference in them. So photo tours generally are there. People are generally looking for me to, or whoever your leader is, to take you to the best places for photos. We've been there before. We know the best places. We know the right time to be there. Depending on weather, what to shift and change. But it's people who feel like they're proficient with their cameras and they want to take us. They want us to take them to the best places. So how to find those optimum photo opportunities, and that's the goal. With a photo workshop, by definition, highlights learning and education kind of over the best places, or not, maybe not highlighting it over, but equally balancing them, and kind of helping people to improve their photography skills. For my particular tours, I call them photo tours, but I do a lot of teaching. When I'm out shooting, I'm constantly telling people, hey, I'm at ISO 1600 at f5.6. That puts me at 1/500th of a second for shutter speed, which should be perfect for this shot or whatever. So I'm constantly calling that out and helping people. So that's, to me, it's kind of the balance of trying to teach. I want everybody, I don't care what level they come, whether they're beginners who've never held a mirrorless camera before, all the way to the pro, and I want them to still learn something, even the professional. So this is my tour list. As you can see, this is not like some pitch to sell my tours because most of them are sold out this year. But I do have a couple spots available for Peru and Galapagos coming up. I thought I'd throw that in here. And my photo tours to Costa Rica sell out about a year in advance, and I just opened up all new ones for 2026. So anyway, let's talk about what to look for in a photo tour or a photo workshop. So for one, you want an experienced leader, someone who's done this before. I hear people talk about the fact that if you're going with someone who doesn't know, the camera settings in detail, or has not been to that location before, or doesn't know how to teach, or the worst is like you have someone who is more interested in getting their own good photos than teaching and letting you get the good photos. And that's something that, and I even have a hard time that sometimes when there's something amazing happening, I'm like, oh God, I really want this photo. But the guest always has to be first. Obviously you want to find a location that is interesting to you. So whether it's something, for wildlife or for people or for landscapes. And of course, each location is different. And what I'm going to do here, I've got about 6 or 7 slides here with like this with a lot of text. And then I'm going to go into a bunch of images and kind of give you examples of photo tours and how I teach. Um, Reasonable group size is something that people always ask me about what the size is. I generally take no more than 12 people, depending on location. But you want to keep the size at a reasonable for you to go so that if you have questions, that leader can answer your question and not be so inundated with people that they can't answer it. One thing you want to think about when you're picking a photo tour is how much movement and how much distance are you covering. So when I talk about the movement, I'm talking about like how many times are you changing physical locations to like different hotels or lodges. And so I know like when we go to Africa, we would jump lodges like every 2, 3 days, which is great because you see different environments and different animals. But it also gets tiring. Versus some people love my Costa Rica tour because we're in one location the entire time and just doing day trips out to just see different things, which makes it a lot easier. Um, and again, I know that like the pace is important. A lot of the people who go on photo tours are retired because they have the time to do it. And so you can't have people hiking, 8, 10 miles. Um, so, and some tours do. So you want to check the pace and make sure it's something that you can handle. The right skill level is important as well. So I've seen and been on photo tours where everybody's got a 600 f4 lens, tripod, with gimbals and the whole thing, and that's what you're set up and shooting with. So you have mostly very high level pro type photographers. And there's other photo tours that are designed for the beginner. So what I try to do in mine is I let mine be at all levels so I can handle, anybody who's just picked up a camera for the first time or just showing up with their phone, all the way to the pro level. And so, what I find on a typical tour is you've got about 20% of people who know what they're doing with their camera and they want to just go and find the best images, which is our job. And about 50% of people who are proficient with their camera need a little bit of hand holding, especially if it's in a new environment. And then you have another 20% or so that are really new to the camera and need a lot of help. And that tends to be fairly typical, but you want to make sure that the skill level is right for you. In other words, don't make it so it's too high for you or too low for you. The proper amount of education. Again, some people want more help and some people don't. Some people don't want me, constantly calling out camera settings. They find it distracting. And some people really welcome it. So you want to kind of look for how much education you're going to be getting on that trip. Is it good for spouses or people to forget other people to go? And I get this question quite a bit, where people say, well, like, my spouse is not a photographer. Would they enjoy it? And so you want to look at a group where hopefully it's still enjoyable even for your other person to go with you. Cost is also obviously very important. Some trips can range $15,000-$20,000, where other trips might be 2 or 3 grand. So, and in that cost, you want to find out does that include airfare or internal airfare? Does it include meals? And what level of the meals? Does it include drinks? What kind of add-ons? Things like that. Because obviously all that adds up. So you want to make sure it fits within your budget. And the most important thing to me is how much fun it is. I always tell people that the number one goal is to have a great time. Yes, we want to get great photos, but more importantly, I want you to have fun while we're doing it. I don't want it to be like complete boot camp and not be enjoyable and you come home with great images. I want it to be a combination of having a great time and getting great photos. So here's common questions I get. So first one is, how many people do you take? I talked about that already. I take around 10 to 12 people. But I get that quite a bit because people are really concerned with how much time and individual attention they'll get. Another one I get a lot is, do I have to be a professional photographer? And again, for my tours, the answer is no. I take people of all levels. But again, some tours, you do want to be very, very proficient with your camera. And other tours, like I said, they might just take you and you can bring your iPad or your phone if you want. How should I set up my camera is a question I get probably 30 or 40% of the time. And one of the things I do at the beginning of my tours is I tell people, give me your camera and I'll help you walk through and we can change a bunch of settings on it. Because there's certain things I recommend, again, depending on where we're going, For instance, if we're shooting a lot of wildlife and you're using a Canon mirrorless camera, I like it to set it up for prioritizing animals over people so that it locks in better on them. I set up the cameras for dual back button focus and stuff like that. So people ask on my tours specifically, do they need to be a Canon shooter? And you don't. I mean, when on my tours, I take people who use Nikon, Olympus, Sony, whatever. It is easier, admittedly, for me to teach when they're Canon shooters because I'm so familiar with the menus and setup. But I've learned to become pretty proficient with other cameras to help people be able to change common settings. So, is it safe? And this one I get. Interestingly enough, I had someone ask me recently about Peru, if it was safe, and I went down there last year and it was very safe, but people still worry. Obviously during COVID, there was a lot of concerns about health safety. Now it tends to be more a bit about safety and with security levels as far as like, am I safe with my equipment and all that. And honestly, a good photo tour should be in a safe place. And if a place is not safe, you shouldn't go. And we had one photo tour to Cuba, and it was during the height of where they were having power outages. They had food shortages, and we scrubbed the trip because it was not going to be enjoyable for people. This is a great, funny question, but comes up a lot. How is the food? And I can tell you that for places like Africa, Costa Rica, the food is excellent. It's usually very edible and not too exotic. Like in Peru, if you want to try some exotic food, you can, but mainly you can just easily get away with vegetarian or chicken or whatever you want. So I had one couple that went with me to Costa Rica, and they brought a whole suitcase full of granola bars because they thought they were going to be eating like weird Costa Rican food. Now at the resort we stay at down there, it's a 5-star resort. And it's like eating on a cruise ship. It's too much food and too good. And they laughed about the fact that they brought all these granola bars because they didn't need any of them. Should I get travel insurance? I generally recommend that people get travel insurance, but it's up to that individual. Some tour companies do require it. I don't require it. I recommend it, but it's up to that person or that couple if they want. What is included? As I mentioned before, sometimes tours will include internal travel or not, or travel all the way to the destination. Most of my tours, you have to get yourself to the first spot, and then I take you from there, and all internal flights are included. But that does change, and that varies depending on which tour you're going to be on. So you want to make sure and check on that. And as part of that, do we need to tip is another common question. And so for my tours, I always tell people, if we're going out in a boat, you want to tip your boat captain. For the guides that take us, and the guides are essential to the success of almost any tour. So I recommend tipping the guide maybe $10 or $20 a day. So you want to have the right amount to tip. And another question, which I did not put in here, is, do I bring cash or not? And if I do I bring it in their currency? And then it just depends on where you're going. So some places like in Africa, Costa Rica, they'll take American currency. That's not a problem. Other places, you want to have their currency. And then the other one I get a lot is, should I bring a laptop with me? A lot of people don't want to bring a laptop because it's heavier, but I really recommend it for a couple of reasons. One is I like people to be able to download and look at the images they took on day one, so they can look and see, okay, what did I get in day one that I need to improve on for day two? And so, and for me, I like to download every night and give examples of what worked for me and my favorite shots to show the people at breakfast the next morning. I also, on my tours, I typically try to do a little culling class to show how I go through my images, and a little Photoshop class to show how I take a good image and make it much better, which, by the way, tomorrow's presentation at the same time with B&H is on Photoshop and how I take a good image and make it better. So if you want to see that, we'll do that tomorrow. So preparation, obviously, first thing is, once you book in for a photo tour, you want to figure out the right flights. Typically, I'll try to fly in the day before the tour starts. So God forbid there's any problems with the flights, I'm there and almost guaranteed that I'll make it. So And people ask me, should I be there on that day or the day before? And that's again up to each individual. I like to play it safe and get there one day early. Um, luggage weight limitations, and this comes up a lot for Africa and Costa Rica, where if you look at the airline information, they say, you're limited to, 40 pounds total of luggage, including camera gear. So you want to be aware of that, and don't go by just what the airline says, because quite often what happens is the airline will say one thing, but you can get around that. So like for instance, for Costa Rica on our internal flights, we basically take over the whole plane. So, and we can have less people on each plane and more gear. And if anything, they charge you $20 or something if you have too much gear. But you also will want to avoid bringing too much gear. And I've had people go on my photo tours where they bring like, 3 cameras, 8 lenses, 2 laptops. Like, that's overkill. You don't need all that. So you want to pack and talk to your photo tour leader to find out exactly what to bring. And I'll be talking about photo recommended gear as we go through images here in a minute. Temperature predictions, you want to kind of know what that's going to be so you can dress appropriately. One of the things I do as a tour leader about 6 weeks before the trip, I'll actually send out an email and give recommended clothing and camera gear. And also, because Canon sponsors me, and this is important, they're really great, and they loan for free any gear people want as long as they have it in stock from CPS. So people can borrow a Canon R5 II, R6 II, whatever they want, any lens they want on the photo tours. And so 6 weeks before my tours, I'll reach out and say, does anybody want to borrow any gear? Let me know, and I'll have it shipped to them. So packing and clothing is important because there are some places that will go which might be really cold at night or in the morning and then warm during the day. So you kind of have to know that. And also for things like bugs or whatever, you want to know, do you need long pants, shorts? Surprisingly, like in Costa Rica and in Peru and those places, people are always worried about the bugs. And I always wear shorts and don't have a problem. But still, for those who tend to get bit a lot, yeah, you may want to wear long pants. Camera equipment, as I mentioned, I'll give that recommendation and help people. And a lot of people, like I had a call yesterday from people that are going with me on a photo tour later this year, and they're asking about, what lenses they should bring on what camera equipment. It's not just the camera equipment, it's also accessories. So, do you need a polarizing filter? Do you want a tripod? Things like that. So, again, depending on where you're going, will be different equipment, and I'll cover that here in a minute. So beside the photos, what are other things you want to be looking for in a photo tour? One is learn about the location, right? Whether it's the culture, the people, learning about the wildlife, like the tour guides who I use. So I go and I teach photography, but I rely on a local guide to take us these places. And the guides are amazing because you'll learn so much about the people and the environment. And if we're in somewhere with wildlife, you can ask questions about why is that animal doing that, or whatever, and learn so much. So that's really important. And that's even goes down to the food, right? Trying local food and stuff, as long as it's safe, is really cool. So you want to learn about that location. Meeting new people, whether it's new people in country or meeting new people on the tour. And I'm very fortunate, I should knock on wood, that the people I've had on my tour have been amazing, and we all gel. And I have many of my tour groups. I'll create a WhatsApp group or a text group, and many of them still talk even years later, which is really, really cool to see. You want to learn from others. So not just from your tour leader, but you'll hear people talking. You'll be at lunch or breakfast or dinner talking to them about the day and what you shot, and you'll learn from others and what they're doing with their cameras. Even for me as a tour leader, I learn from others. I'm like, wait, you could do that? I've never tried that setting or whatever. And so being open to having fun and meeting people, but also learning from them is really important. Experience new adventures, right? I mean, be open to trying new things, going new places. And one of the things for me, being an ADD person, I love the thought that everything's new when I go. Even if I've been to a place before, it's always new, which is cool. So I always recommend to people try new food and drinks if you want. Down in Peru, when we were there on the last trip, a lot of people had never had pisco before. If you drink, the pisco sours are amazing and fun. There's even a drink down there, a certain tea that they drink with a coca leaf. Does not get you high. That helps with altitude. So if you go to Peru, drink a lot of the coca tea. It was quite good, and that helps with any kind of altitude issues. So try it if you want. Some people don't want to try weird things like alpaca, which actually tastes pretty good. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. But again, as I said before about making it fun, you want memorable moments. You want to be able to look at your trip and think, wow, that was an amazing trip. And you want to look at those photos, and those will remind you of what you were thinking and doing at that time. And I can tell you, every photo that's in this presentation, which we're about to get to, you'll see a picture. I'll think about what I was thinking about at that moment or what was happening. And I'll cover some on that here in a minute. So let's talk about people and places. This is people and places close to home. So this is a photo tour I did in San Francisco. Golden Gate Bridge, obviously. And this one here, some people will go and just want to get a standard shot of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is awesome. In this case, I was trying to show how to use a filter and get a really long exposure. So it neutralizes the water. Try something in the clouds to make something a little different. Again, I talked about on photo tours, finding the right location. So I grew up in San Francisco. I know the city really, really well. But I took people to a place where I knew this would be a good shot. I know that this had to be a long lens shot. So I could tell everybody, okay, for this one, if you have your longer zoom, bring that one because we want to shoot with the bridge, we're getting the city in the background. And here's a shot I did of downtown from another point, a Vista Point that I'm aware of. I took people there. This actually was kind of a hazy day. I used the haze filter in Photoshop, the dehaze, and made this actually a very cool, usable shot. When we took it, you would have thought, nah, this is not a keeper. So I'll talk about that tomorrow in the Photoshop class. So recommended equipment for that tour for San Francisco is 2 camera bodies. So I always recommend bringing 2 camera bodies because God forbid you break one or drop one or whatever, you want to have a second one. For that tour, I really highlight the walk around lens, whether it's a 24 to 105, like you see here in the photo, or a 24-70. That's a lens that we use a lot, or even a wide angle, like a 15 to 35 lens works really well. The longer zoom we don't use as much on like the San Francisco tour. For that particular tour, it's almost all wide, but clearly when you see these other tours, it's very different. So again, every tour is going to be different recommended equipment. So for San Francisco, I do recommend a tripod because I wanted to do night shots there. I'll show you some night shots at the end of the presentation. And a polarizing filter because we're doing a lot of daytime shots in the city, so it helps to have a polarizing filter. I use the Tiffin HT polarizing filter. So when I want to talk about how I challenge my guests, and I'm going to show you that in pictures here in a second. But some guests want to go and just get a nice shot, and that's totally fine. Again, doesn't matter what camera you're using or what level you are as a photographer. Some people just want to get a cool shot. That's fine. So you want to be ready to get those pictures at all times. So I tell people, keep your camera ready at all times because sometimes something happens. Ooh, wow, boom, you want to get the shot. Look all around. Don't just be focused like on the Golden Gate Bridge. Maybe you want to look in a different direction and see something that's really cool. So be aware of your surroundings in all directions and reflections. And if there's a puddle on the ground, maybe that's a cool reflection shot. So be aware of everything that's around you. So one of the things I tell people, and this is true if you've seen my Olympic work, I try to get my safe shot first, which means maybe 1,000th of a second or your standard picture of, in this case, the bridge. But then how do you shoot it differently, like slowing the shutter, motion panning, whatever. So as we go through more images here, I'm going to show that too. Think about foreground and background, and that's really important. Actually, in almost all the photos, but especially in Costa Rica where you have a low light and you want to shoot in the right direction, and I'll cover that in a second. Try to get the best angle of that shot. Shoot tight, shoot wide. So some shots are going to be, right into a face of a person, and some might show the person in the environment. And I love looking for patterns and leading lines. So these are all things I keep in mind. Here's a safe shot in San Francisco. This is a shot I took years and years ago of what's called the Painted Ladies in the city. On the photo tour, everybody wants that shot. We do the shot. And then I'd say to them, okay, let's try something different. So we started motion panning the cars that were going by in front of the Painted Ladies. So it's a very different look from the standard shot to something slightly different. And again, some people love it, the standard shot more. Some people like this more, but great to challenge you just to learn something new. But also, it's fun to have both types of shots. Here's also a motion pan. So we were doing the cable cars. There's one area I know where the cable cars intersect both. There's two lines that come through. So you have ample opportunity of shooting a lot of cable car shots. And again, for this one here, it was teaching motion panning after people got their safe shot of the cable cars. This here, we were on Treasure Island in San Francisco, and we were shooting pictures of the Bay Bridge. This is the new portion of the Bay Bridge that faces away from San Francisco. And at the time that we got there to do night shots, and the light was not down yet, so we had time to kill. So the light was actually quite nice on the other side of the bridge. So we went to the other side and shot this, and I turned it black and white because I liked it black and white more than the color version. So again, doing things differently. So here's people in places not so close to home, so not in the Bay Area for me. And this is a shot I did in Vietnam. This was using a longer zoom lens. I think this is actually just a 70 to 200, if I remember correctly. But I love the face of this woman. Like, just it has so much character. And I just love that one little teardrop in her eye right there. And just the wrinkles. Just, I want to know the story of her life. It's just, I love this photo. So this is a tight shot. This is another one I just did in Vietnam recently on a photo tour. And this woman was, I believe, in her 90s, and she was really cute and really fun to talk to. Through our tour guide, she was translating. He was translating for us, and she was, oh, you don't want my picture? I'm not good looking. And we said, no, we love you. And so we moved her, so there's a brick wall behind her, and got these shots in nice light. This is another shot I did in Vietnam. This is in the rice fields up in an area called Sapa, and we were on our tour bus, and we were driving. And I said that I saw this one tree that was sticking out amongst the rice fields. I'm like, oh, that'd be a great shot. And I told the bus driver, is there any way to stop here? And he says, no one's ever asked to stop here. No one's ever seen that. And so on our way back, he turned around and he stopped and he let us get the shot, and everybody loved it. It's one of my favorite shots from there. And again, it's the leader's responsibility to try to find shots like this for you to get. Again, trying motion panning. This is in Vietnam near the train street. I saw this guy in a moped, and I was teaching people how to slow the shutter speed down and just to play around and learn. This one here, this shot is in Cambodia. Oh, sorry, this is in Laos. And the monks get up every morning and they go and they get rice and things from the people that live in the city as well as visitors. And so we got up early and photographed that. That was really fun. Again, I was teaching people to focus on the person up front and let them go out of focus into the background. But it's really fun to get shots that you would never see here at home. This is in one of the floating villages in Vietnam. The people are great. There's a little kid going to school, and just what a fun shot to get. And I love this shot with a reflection here. That's what I was going for. So I didn't want to shoot too tight on their face. I wanted to get a little bit wider shot to show the environment here. Recommended equipment for that trip, two camera bodies again. The wide angle zoom lens, especially for shots in place like Cambodia, when you're in the ruins of Thap Ram or Angkor Wat. It's great to have a wide lens there. So I do a 15 to 35 or 24 to 105 lens, and then a mid-range walk-around zoom. So maybe a 7200 as the longest lens I'd recommend on that trip. And polarizing filter, which I use quite a bit on that as well. I've got a picture here of the Canon R5 II. When I do my trips to anywhere without wildlife, if it's people and landscapes and things, I love the R5 II and the R6 II as my camera equipment. So here's a shot I did, again, pretty standard shot at Taj Mahal in India. So here's a standard shot, and everybody might get this shot. But when we were walking around inside some of the buildings, I saw this in this shot with the light coming through the window, and no one else saw it. Everybody, because this was like there's like a line here to get into this building, and people were just in line and weren't looking. And I said to people like, "This is cool," but you had to really underexpose the shot to see the streaks of light. And so I was sitting up against this wall, and I said to everybody, "Change your ISO down to 100." Go exposure comp -1, or I think -1 1/3, and that'll really accentuate this, and let's get the shot. So again, nobody else saw this when we were walking by. I actually really love that shot. And then we hired a model in India so we could get some cool shots of her. And this is with the 70 to 200. Repeating patterns, I talked about. I love the fact of having leading lines and repeating patterns. This is on photo tour in Japan. And actually, the interesting thing about this area is you'll notice there's no one here walking. There's two directions for this. People walk up one way and they generally go out and exit, but you could actually go back and walk back down and through again. But no one ever goes back down the other direction, which is the best place to go get this shot. So again, knowing that is really helpful for the tour guide or your leader to say, okay, let's go get a shot and get it clean. Otherwise, you have tons of people coming through and you don't really get the true effect that you see here. This is in Cuba. I positioned ourselves by the Capitol building there and waited for one of the cool vintage cars to come through. I love the red, the way that kind of worked against the white and the blue. And so we waited for one of the cars to come through to have the right color. This is one of the guys in Cuba. So this is a wide shot. This is a 24mm shot. This is a 70-200. I like this guy. He was just a gardener that was working in one of the areas and smoking a cigar. I'm like, that's so classic Cuba. So I wanted that shot. One of the things I was teaching here is to look at the light and to have where I actually asked him to sit down here, but I love the light on the one side of his face going into shadow. It makes it much more dynamic. It was also toward the end of the day, so we had good evening light on him. This is another shot in Cuba. And for this one here, I was teaching flash photography. So we had someone here holding a flash, pointing at the ballerina here. And that was the class, was teaching lighting here on this portrait. Now heading into Peru, this was a shot. This is a 24mm shot up at Machu Picchu. It was a really cool view there. First time being there, it was really amazing. And I'll talk about how I post-processed this image tomorrow because it was not quite like this when we took it, but good wide angle shot. You could, if you ever go to Machu Picchu, I'd recommend a 15-35 or a 24-70 type lens for Machu Picchu. Knowing which lenses and knowing where to stand and knowing to get tickets in advance and what time to go are all important for that location. Also in Peru, which is a really fun trip, the llamas. This is at one of our lunch spots. They have llamas there, and I just love the background and having them there. It was one of the favorite spots of everybody that day. So again, wide angle shot to include that cool thatch hut with the llamas. The people. This woman, and one of the cool things about Peru that I love is that people do not dress for the tourists. They literally wear these colors all the time, which I think is phenomenal. So we saw this woman. This is up in the hills above Cusco, and I loved her outfit. And we were up in the mountains, and I said, "Can you just look out this way?" And she did, and I had everybody doing portraits of her, and I just thought it's just beautiful. This shot was in one of the markets where they show how they dye the color of the yarns. And I just love having her off center here in the shot, surrounded by all the color. There was a plastic bag hanging here. Tomorrow in the Photoshop class, I'll show how I remove that. But other than that, I love this really cool shot to show classic Peru. Okay, again, going back to how I teach people and push them, I saw this woman in one of the local markets in Peru, and she was kind of going through the corn, the kernels, and she kept doing this where she was dropping them into this pan. And I did a safety shot at maybe 500th of a second. And then I said to everybody, you know what? She keeps doing the same thing. It's very repeatable. So let's go ahead and slow that shutter down. And here I had her hands nice and still, but cool motion of the corn kernels going down. And so fun to get something slightly different. This is also in Peru. So the reason I added this photo is in Peru, you really don't need a long lens other than for shooting wildlife. They have this long-beaked hummingbird, which is really cool there. This is the only shot I got on the last trip. We're going to time it differently on the next trip so we can get more. But this shot, tomorrow when I show you the original shot, you won't believe it because it looks like a throwaway. But it was cool to get a shot of this, and this is with a longer lens. I think this is with my 100 to 500, which I did bring with me. This shot here, which I'll also show tomorrow, this is a crop from the R5. But I love the colors of the birds. This is also taken with a 100 to 500 lens. This is a monkey in Peru, which is interesting because I've seen so many monkeys in Africa and in Costa Rica, and the monkeys in Peru were really different. And so that was fun to get a shot. And this is taken with a long lens from a boat. Now, talking about wildlife, let's jump into wildlife here. Let's look at timing. We're doing good. So Costa Rica, this is on the trip that we just did on my last trip there. This is 2 howler monkeys. This is actually on the property at the resort where we stay. And so we had these 2 howlers. It just stopped raining and they're on these branches, and I love the shot. Fun to get something. This is with a 100 to 500 lens as well. I use that lens quite a bit. Same lens here in Costa Rica. This is one of the macaw in flight. And actually the cool thing in Costa Rica is we know that if we see a pod of fruit on the palm like this, typically the birds, if you see the macaw on them, they will go back and forth and back and forth. So it's very predictable. So we can push the ISO up high and get our shutter speed to like 2 or 3,000th of a second and catch them in flight. I will also mention that with the Canon R5 II and the Canon, any of the newer Canon cameras that have the pre-capture, it's amazing because you can actually hold the button halfway down, and then when the bird leaves, you hit the button, it'll go back half a second and capture, so you have a better chance of getting the bird in flight, even if you may have missed it in the past, which is really amazing. This is a couple of sloths, a sloth with a baby. This was taken a couple trips ago. Again, long lens. There's one area we go to, we're almost guaranteed to see the sloths, which is cool. Another hummingbird shot. This one here, I did the shutter speed of around, I think it was 150th of a second, so I could get the blur of the wings. And a lot of people say to me, well, don't you want them frozen in place? And I said, I don't. I actually like the motion here. So I love the colors of the butterfly, this Costa Rica, and a little bit of the tongue sticking out, which is kind of cool. So recommended equipment for trips like Costa Rica, 2 camera bodies again, a mid-range zoom, which is optional because we don't use it much. 95% of the time in Costa Rica and also in Africa, you're using a long zoom lens, at least 300 or 400 millimeters, because you're shooting things that are a little farther away, so you want to have that reach. In Costa Rica, not in Africa, I recommend a macro lens. Although, interestingly enough, with the new 100 to 500 lens, which you'll see here in the middle, that can actually focus so close that now in Costa Rica, a lot of people are opting to shoot with this lens to shoot the tree frogs and things versus using the 100 macro like this lens here. So on these trips, I do like using my new Canon R1. I use this at the Paris Olympics, and it is amazing how fast it focuses and can shoot. But the R5 II is also great because it has higher resolution, all the same kind of focus abilities. So either one of those would be great, or even the R6 II is great for Costa Rica or Africa. So here's a shot of a red-eyed tree frog in Costa Rica, and this is not taken with a macro lens. This is taken with the 100 to 500. And in that trip, most of what we shoot is in the wild, but for the macro photography, we go to a reptile area where he'll collect frogs and snakes the night before and have them for us so we can photograph them, and then he goes and he puts them back. So this is a controlled shoot. Same thing with this little dart frog. This is a macro shot. You can tell there's a lot of separation between the foreground, background, and actually having the frog in focus in the middle. This shot here also with a macro. This is another frog, glass frog in Costa Rica. I love the ability to capture things like this. It's really fun down there. This is an ocelot in Costa Rica. We don't see them. I've only seen them once in the wild, and this is that one time. And it's funny because I've shown this in past presentations. We didn't even have time to change camera settings, so we just jumped out of the vehicle, started shooting, and I had a fairly slow shutter speed, so I ended up motion panning this ocelot and getting the shot. That was tough and tough to teach. This is on a recent trip to Costa Rica. We were in the area looking for sloths, and I have multiple guides that work in the sloth area, so they're looking for different sloths on different trees, so that while we're shooting one, they're looking for others, and they found this owl, and we all went and took turns photographing the owl. Oh, that was a fun shot. This is a couple spider monkeys in Costa Rica. This is with the older 100 to 400 lens, but it's fun. And one of the things I teach is it's great to get one animal in the shot, but it's also great if you can get a youngster in that shot, or have those two, like the two howler monkeys, where they're interacting. Makes it kind of fun and different. Here we have three. This is on the recent trip. These are the white-faced monkeys, capuchin monkeys in Costa Rica as well. Howler monkey looking right at us. This is on the property as well, where we stay. This is also in Costa Rica. We see lots of different kinds of wildlife there, which is really cool. This one here, I was teaching, we were shooting hummingbirds, and it started raining. And so the people I was with, the guests, they were putting their cameras away. And I said, well, hold on a second. Don't put them away just yet. Let's try to get pictures of the hummingbirds with the rain. And my goal is to try to get the raindrops bouncing off either the wings or the head. And so it was fun to get the raindrops on the beak and coming down and coming off the bird. And so this ended up being one of my favorite shots I've ever taken. And so again, knowing the environment, knowing the wildlife, and knowing the right settings and how to shoot it definitely helps. This is by the swimming pool in the resort. Saw this hummingbird, and it kept opening up its back wings, the tail wings, for the color. And so a bunch of us sat there. When I go swimming at the pool in Costa Rica, I bring my camera quite often because you never know what you're going to see. And this is a couple of the Firebill air carry. This actually is also in the sloth area. They have a feeder, so we can quite often find birds like this and photograph them in that area. Another red-eyed tree frog. This is a macro shot. Now, this shot here of the dolphin. Dolphins are my favorite animals. I just started doing the dolphin tour. I didn't used to do this on my trip to Costa Rica until I tried to add it. I did a test where we went out looking for dolphins, and it was so successful that now it's on every trip. And so this is something that, even though I'd been down there 8 or 10 times, had never done it, and I have now added that in. So even as a guide, I'm learning new things down there. But it's almost guaranteed to see the dolphins. They have both bottlenose and spinner dolphins, and it's really cool to see them jump like this. Hard to teach because you're just trying to get people into the right settings, and then you have to see them jump and quickly turn and shoot. But I had like at least 4 people on the last trip that got amazing shots of the dolphins jumping. This is a flying fish, and those are really hard to shoot, but sometimes people get lucky and get it. Even I got lucky on this shot to get a picture of it with the trail of the water behind it. Even the bugs on that trip are cool in Costa Rica. So I've photographed so many monkeys down there, things. I was looking for something different. I saw these bugs one morning on our day off, and I just started shooting. I thought, I love the colors of that bug. Africa, let's talk a little bit about Africa. For African wildlife, you can do different trips. This is Tanzania for the crossing of the Mara. This is during the Great Migration. This is one of my favorite shots I've ever taken. This is a croc that was trying to get lunch and trying to get one of the wildebeest that was crossing and missed. And all the other wildebeest literally were jumping and stepping on the croc as they jumped over it. It was a really cool moment. And it's very predictable. If you go and see a crossing for the migration, almost every time there's a crossing, the crocodiles will come. They sense the vibration in the water and they will head over there. This is a leopard that was on a rock. I had our guide move. He stopped his vehicle facing the front of the leopard. I said, no, 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 no. The background is so perfect if we come around to the other side. So again, there is being in the right position to get a shot like this. Hippos, having been to Africa enough times, and knowing that if they have good, plentiful water, that they will open their mouth. This is how they show dominance. And so having people get ready for that. And as we're shooting, I'll say like mouth's opening, and everybody can try to get the shot. Showing the environment. This is in Tanzania as well. Not just having a tight shot of the elephant, but you're not in a zoo, so might as well show the acacia trees and everything around the animals. I love this shot because the baby elephant is a lighter in color, almost stands out amongst all the adults in this pack, which I really think is cool. This shot here is a good lesson for people. This was taken in Tanzania. This is, we actually had at one point, I think we had 16 lions in one tree. And we had stopped with all of our vehicles. We were watching this pack of lions for quite a while. And the other vehicles got tired and they wanted to keep moving on. And none of them were in a tree. They're all in the grasses. And I said to the people that were in my vehicle, hey, do you guys want to stay? And I offered the other vehicles, do you guys want to stay? And they said no. We stayed for like 3 or 4 hours with this pack and got some amazing shots. But I love the fact that we had this many in one tree at one time. That was really unusual. So don't be afraid to stop and wait things out and see what happens. This is a baboon in Africa. This is actually in a parking lot area where they were like looking for free lunch. And I just told all my guests, get down low so you don't see the road and just shoot straight into their face. And I really like that shot. Really cool. It looks like he had his hair done just for me. Perfect synergy. Now this is a shot at a kill. This is a female lioness early in the morning. You can tell by the light. It was early in the morning. Beautiful kind of golden tones. You could see the kill in the background, but I had everybody shoot this and focus on the face and zoom in tight so that you got the eyes in focus, but again, diffused in the background. You don't need to see all the blood and guts of the kill. Getting a sense of it is fine, but this is what I wanted in the shot. This is a kingfisher in Africa. Love the colors, love getting the fish in the mouth. And this was, again, fairly predictable. They kept going back to the same spot. So we pulled our boat up. This is in Botswana. We pulled our boat up right to this rock area and kept waiting for the fish, the bird to come back with a fish in its mouth. Also in Botswana, the elephants in the river, once you see them cross, you get your boat there, a bunch of them will cross and you can kind of track them and get some fun shots. This is back in Tanzania with the lion and cubs. I love the cubs. They're so great. I love keying in on them. And again, this is me telling people to focus on the front animal and get down as low as we could in the vehicle to get a shot like this. This is on the way to the airstrip. We saw this pack of lions and stopped for a little bit. And I really, one of the things I told the guests is I love the fact that we had different generations here. We had, this is a fairly young, lioness here on the right, but then we had the cubs and older ones off to the left. And so we had a lot of different shots with them. It was really cool. Going back again to challenging people, we had these giraffes running by us in Tanzania, and there was at least 15 giraffe that were coming by. So again, safety shot first. We all got a nice picture of the giraffe. And I said to them, hey, there's still 6 more coming. Let's try to slow that shutter speed down and pan along with them. Our vehicle was stopped. So I slowed the shutter speed down. I believe I was at 40th of a second and challenged everybody to try to get a great shot. The good shot on the motion pan is great motion in the extremities like this, but tack sharp on the face. Good motion in the background as well. So having nothing in focus really except for the face. Same thing here with this zebra running at full speed in Africa. One of the hottest shots I've ever taken. This one here on a different trip, after I had taken this one, I thought, well, I'll try to do it again. And we had a whole pack of zebra, and I took this one at slow shutter speeds. And I panned along with this front one, which is why it's more in focus. Some people see this and think, oh, I hate it. It's all blurry and mess. and other people love this shot. So again, photography is subjective, and you know what? Try different things. That's one of the great things with these digital cameras is you can shoot a lot and see what works and what doesn't work. And this is why I recommend bringing the laptop with you on the trip, because that way you could download and say, oh, I do like this, or I didn't like this, or tomorrow I want to change this and try something different. And this is a motion pan of a bunch of hippos running into the water. And with that slower shutter speed, we're getting the motion of the water and God, this could be poop, or it could also be the algae flying, but kind of fun. This is a shot we were doing in Namibia in Africa. All of us were down low in the sand. It was taken with the older 100 to 400. This is taken with my 1DX back in the day. And I just pre-focused on the chameleon, and waited for its tongue to fire, and I was firing at 12 frames or 16 frames a second. And as soon as I saw the tongue come out, I just fired as fast as I could and got the shot picking up the mealworm. Oh, a lot of people got the shot. That was cool. As I mentioned, I love to shoot when the sun goes down. So I did a photo tour in Africa, or sorry, in Australia. This is during Vivid, which is where they light up the downtown area. It's really cool. So a lot of tripod use there. By shooting at f11, you can get that starburst effect off the lights, which is cool. And that's what you'll see off the Sydney Opera House there. This is in Angkor Wat. This is at like 4 in the morning, or actually about 5 in the morning. And this is as the sun is coming up, but really fun to get something different like that. Again, you have to have a tripod for these shots. Got it. This during the last photo tour of San Francisco, shooting over in the Marin Headlands over the Golden Gate Bridge. You can tell it's a slow shutter shot. We get all the motion of the vehicles here. Little neutralization of the water. You can see more of the reflections, which is cool. But kind of neat to get a shot like this. Another shot from the first night of the photo tour, from that other point we shot the daytime shot. And this is getting the colors off the Salesforce Tower that's here in downtown San Francisco. Underneath the Bay Bridge. This I don't do on a photo tour. This is me personally shooting. This is off limits. You have to climb over fences and things. So I put this in here because sometimes there's places you don't want to take people. This is, you have to climb down and climb up, and we're not supposed to be there anyway. So anyway, jumping back once again, this is my photo tour schedule. I do have 4 spots left for Peru. I had 2 spots open for Costa Rica until yesterday. Someone just took those last 2 for Costa, but Alaska sold out already. Peru and Galapagos, I have a couple spots left for those. And then Costa Rica for 2026 are wide open right now because I just added all those. So if you're interested in any of those, this is how you reach me. You can reach me at jeffcable.com or jeff@jeffcable.com. If you haven't followed the blog, check it out, blog.jeffcable.com. I tend to blog every week, and you can look at a lot of the past photo tours and images from those tours on the blog. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Jeff Cable Photography, and Twitter, jcable12. For now, thank you again to Canon for sponsoring this, because I do love my Canon gear. If you look behind me, I'm gonna go ahead and quit sharing here. But if you look behind me, you'll see a lot of Canon equipment. I've got the R1, I've got the large printer, and a bunch of lenses over here, and I do love my Canon stuff. But anyway, now I'm open for any questions that may have come in. If everybody has any, fire away.
First, I thought that was a grand piano behind you, Jeff. I didn't realize that was a printer.
Grand printer, which is way more fun than grand piano.
It totally is. I thought you were holding out. I'm like, wait, is he like classically trained or something?
Not even close. And you don't want to hear me sing, I promise.
Next time. I'll start it off with a question from Elizabeth asking if you bring other instructors or anyone to help you teach or wrangle the crowds.
It depends on the trip. Like in Africa, I would do it with another guy, Mike, and he would help teach if we had a lot of people for different vehicles. One of the things in Africa, when we go, we have multiple vehicles, I'll get on the radio between the vehicles. If we're not all parked by each other, because you usually stand on them and you could just talk amongst them. But if we're not, I can get on the radio. But for like Costa Rica, we have multiple guides that go with us because we take multiple vehicles. They know the surroundings and the areas and the animals and everything else, and they haul all the food and everything, drinks and everything with us and all that. But I'm teaching the photography. They're finding us the best stuff. Because trust me, when you go to these areas, and I've been many times, I can't see 10% of what they see. Those guys spot stuff that you and I would miss in a heartbeat. So I rely on them for things like that. Or like in Peru, Galapagos, I have Dan down who lives down there. So again, he's our guy who's arranging the cars and making sure that flights are set and everything else. And I do the teaching of the photography. So I rely on all of them for that, typically. Yeah.
Awesome. Mike says, has a Canon R6. Given that I can shoot at a higher ISO without noise and having noise reducing software, is a tripod as essential to bring?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Mike, if you're shooting wildlife, you don't need it, and you can push ISOs. The picture you saw of the macaw that was flying off the tree with a nut in its mouth, that was ISO 10,000, I believe.
Wow.
And I used Topaz denoise, which I swear by. It's amazing. I mean, it really gets rid of the noise and also doesn't soften the image at all, which I love. So it is true, Mike, that you can push higher ISOs and you don't have to, take a tripod. But with that said, and also actually the other thing you can do with these newer cameras is to the opposite. You can handhold a camera and do a slow shutter shot, let's say of a waterfall, maybe half a second, because the image stabilization is so good on the camera and the lens that I don't have to take a tripod now to shoot slow shutter shots of a waterfall. When I was in Hawaii last week, I did a bunch of cool shots and I didn't bring a tripod. I brought one and never used it, except when I was taking pictures of us doing fancy selfies. With that said, Mike, if you're doing night shots, like the shots you saw over San Francisco or Australia or the Angkor Wat shot, those are sometimes 5, 10, 20-second shots. No way you could do this handheld. No way. And so for night photography, you definitely want it. For daytime shooting where you just want to slow the shutter a little bit, not as necessary.
Okay. And a question from Andy, if you could review the lens recommendations for Africa, what are the must-haves if you're going to Africa?
Yeah, I mean, Africa, like, honestly, the most important thing is to have a good long zoom. So I've gone to Africa with the older Canon EF 200 to 400. I've gone with the 100 to 400. I've gone with the 100 to 500. I now have the 100 to 300 2.8. I would bring that with a tele. 300 is probably not enough for Africa. You want at least 400 or 500 millimeter at least. So I would bring the 100 to 300 with a 1.4x or 2x tele and use that. Or honestly, the 100 to 500 is a great lens in that range. So if you have a range anywhere from 400 to 600 is going to be great. For there, I would not go to Africa with a 70 to 200. It's not enough.
How close are you to the action most of the time?
Oh, well, in Africa, people who've never been, you'll don't know this, but you'll have lions up against your vehicle. So even with a long zoom, you can't shoot them because they're too close. Because they come and they lay down in the shade of your vehicle to get cooled off. So there are times when they're so close that you can't even photograph them. I've used my phone and like, look underneath me here, there's a lion. And by the way, you're very safe. I've never felt unsafe in Africa, but you do get very close. I mean, I've had photos of lions with a 100 to 500 where I'm just in the face. So you can get within 10 feet of them easily. Again, the interesting thing in Africa is if you're in your vehicle, which is a good thing, they look at the vehicle as one entity, like an elephant, one giant entity. So they're not, and they're also used to the vehicles. So they're not going to mess with you. If you get out of the vehicle, try to go take a picture of them. And I've gotten out of the vehicle in Africa a couple times. Again, when the guide, this is very important to have a good guide, they know when it's safe. So if you want to get out of the vehicle, there's a bunch of tall grass by you, it's a bad idea because the lions can be hiding in the tall grass. Okay. If you're in an open area and you want to get a shot, let's say of an elephant, they might allow you to get out and photograph it. It just depends. This is why having a local guide with you, even though I know the photography and I've been to these places before, I still rely very heavily on the local guides for spotting things and for knowing the right places. Or, gee, I have someone who needs to go to the bathroom. Where's the nearest bathroom? Or, I mean, it could be anything. So I rely heavily on them.
How often are you guys shooting? I mean, I know it's probably long days, but some people probably don't have any idea what to expect as far as, are you going out for 2, 3 hours at a time? Are you taking break in between and doing a morning session, night session? What does the typical day look like?
That's a really good question. I should have paid you for that one. So it depends on the trip. So like Africa, some trips are grueling. Africa, we start in the morning, we're out by 7 in the morning, and you get back at like 5 at night, and you're straight through with a lunchbox, and you're just going, and you can't get out of the vehicle, so you're in a vehicle the whole time. It sounds very confining. It's not. You're so engrossed in everything that it's amazing. Costa Rica, it's a less intense one. We're in one location the whole time. And we'll do a lot of like, there's a couple of days that are full, but a lot of like days where we're back by 3 in the afternoon and we leave at 8, 7:30, and we're back by 3 or 2. And so I find that on a lot of the trips, people don't want boot camp. There are some tours, like I said, I know there's a tour in Costa Rica by another guide. He doesn't do it anymore there, but he used to go down there and he would start people at like 6 in the morning, and they go to like the last bit of daylight, 5:30 p.m. And then they like do course instruction till like 9, and then dinner, and then they go to sleep at like 11 and be up at 5 every morning. Like, you'd see the people like bleary-eyed every morning. Like, and so what I found is that, again, I want my tours, and this is just me, this is not everybody, but my tours, I want a good balance so people can enjoy themselves, get great photos, but also, I love, like in Costa, having a little bit of time to get back and maybe jump in the pool and relax a little bit. I also, for that trip, I have one free day that I can move depending on weather. So if we have something planned, like let's say go see the dolphins, but it's raining that day, you don't want to be on the water when it's raining, I'll shift and make that a day off, and then we'll go see the dolphins on a different day. So we have a couple half days and that one full day where I can shift things around if need be.
Okay. Deborah's asking about the RF 200 to 800, if you have any commentary on that, and she mentioned specifically for Africa.
Yeah, that's a good focal range. I've never used that lens, but for a focal range, that'd be great. It really would. Yeah.
Okay. And he's asking, is a fast f-stop as important as a long focal length, or which is more important, the length or having a fast lens?
Yeah, the length is probably more important than having a fast lens now. Because the cameras, you can push the ISO as high as you can. The focal length is more important. Again, depending on where you're going. So most of these trips, again, for wildlife, you want to have at least 400 millimeters, because here's the problem. The picture you saw of the 2 birds, the really colorful ones in Peru, which I'm going to show tomorrow when I do the Photoshop thing, that was a pretty heavy crop. And that was also at 500 millimeters. If I only had a 200 millimeter lens, and that thing would be like, it'd be like a 600K file versus a 4 meg file or whatever. And so getting that reach is really important. Not only that, but the longer the lens, the more separation you get between your subject and your background, right? You get more bokeh in the background. So the longer zoom definitely is something that I would say is more important than having something that's an f2.8 lens or f4 lens. Now, if you are lucky enough to have a 600 millimeter f4, that's great. What I find on most of my trips is I don't like a fixed focal length lens for any of my tours, because there's times when you're in Africa when that line is really close, and with a 600 millimeter lens, you're going to get a picture of an eyeball, right? So at least with a zoom, I can pull back and get the shot I want. So I am not a fan of a fixed focal length lenses. I generally like my zoom lenses, even when I'm shooting here in the Bay Area for local events and things.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And kind of piggybacking off, you were talking about cropping down if you have a shorter focal length. Tim is a Fujifilm X-T5 shooter, which is a crop sensor body. Do you recommend getting something like a full frame or something that has a higher megapixel count that allows you to crop down? Or do you see plenty of people getting good success with crop bodies?
You know, it's hard to say. Each camera is different. I have people that have older cameras, and they want to bring those on certain trips. I'm like, that's fine. Like I said, even a phone. But if you try to go into Costa Rica with an older camera where you can't go above ISO 400, that's my problem, right? If it's really grainy and nasty. So this is where Canon loaning equipment for free is great, because I'll say to people, why don't you try the R5 II, or why don't you try this camera? And also, why don't you borrow a longer lens if you don't have one? So like if Tim was going on a trip with me and says, okay, I've got this camera and I don't have a long lens, I'd say, that's great. You're going to need to get a longer lens for your Fuji camera, or why don't you borrow some Canon stuff and try it? And I'm not trying to force Canon on people. I'm just saying, hey, you could try it for free and have fun with it and get the shots. Of course, Canon loves it because it gives you a chance to try them. But with that camera, I would not. He asked, should I forget about doing wildlife? Don't ever forget about doing it. You just have to make sure that you can either borrow someone's longer lens and try it. Again, shooting in Africa or places like that where you've got a lot of light, you can get away with it having an older camera because you're not pushing your ISOs that much.
Final question, Jeff. Where is the most underrated place that you've been? Is there a place that not a lot of people is high on their list, but you're like, wow, this place was awesome for photos?
Honestly, I can't answer that because every place is so different.
Mhm.
I mean, there's certain places that are very popular, right? I mean, Costa Rica right now is very popular, especially for me. I sell out a year in advance. That's my favorite trip because we stay in one place and it makes it easy. And National Geographic calls the area that we go the most biologically diverse region in the world. So
Wow.
really cool. Peru, though, I will say, is one place that shocked. I took 10 people down there for my test trip with a new vendor. I wanted to make sure everything was good, which was amazing. And I took a bunch of people down there. And I even took I took my girlfriend and her daughter. I took my brother and his wife. And a lot of people said yeah, I'll go with you. That'd be cool. We'll try it. Everybody came back and said, oh my God, that was the coolest trip I've ever done. My brother's like, he's like, our expectations were like, Peru, and they loved it. So, this is why I say I want people to have a great time, because the experience should be as important. Like a lot of the people I took down to Peru, they were not photographers, right? It was my test trip. So they're just there to see what it's like. They love the food, they love the people, they love the cities, they love the wildlife. And even for me, I didn't know what to expect. So, I mean, part of it is what you make of it. Part of it is the group, right? The dynamic between the people and having fun, which I really promote. And if I talk to someone on the phone and I get a really bad vibe about them, I won't let them on my trip. I know that sounds bad, but I had this one person who said I don't want to talk to anybody on the trip except for you. And, and I'm like, what? No, this is not the right trip.
The whole vibe.
Yeah, it was like that would have been a cancer to the trip. I don't want that. I want people to have a good time. So it's what we make of it, but every place has its own uniqueness to it. Yeah. So
I love that. Well, Jeff, I think the guys dropped a link, and if not, we'll drop a link in the YouTube chat there. And you're going to be back tomorrow. So if you guys think of a question after you didn't get to it today, Jeff will be back tomorrow. But a huge thank you again to Jeff and Canon for hosting today's event. We will
sorry, Derek, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
If they have additional questions and they didn't get them answered, just feel free to email me because I do answer every email. So
there you go. Perfect. He said it, not me. So I always leave it up to our guest. But Jeff, huge thank you again. Always a wealth of knowledge, amazing images. I like the pan of the zebra. It's worth the risk. Even if it's a little more blurry than it now, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to take that over the still shot. So
and it's fun to challenge ourselves, right? I mean, even for me, I want to push myself too, right? To see what we can get. Yep.
Totally. Well, Jeff, huge thank you again to you and to all of our viewers out there. We will catch you back here tomorrow for part 2. But again, B&H Event Space wrapping it up for now. Another edition of the B&H Event Space in the books. Catch y'all next time.
See you tomorrow.